Hello. Well, as my regular viewers know, I run an audio and video transfer business. Now, today we're going to cover some things to do with branding, and this is some things that could be useful to other businesses, not just in this field, but other fields as well. So let's look a little bit at some of the branding I've dealt with over the years. We'll start with my original logo, which I used way back in the days of DVD. So here is my original business card. And I designed this logo, and I'm quite proud of it, really. I used actually Paint Shop Pro. Most people might use Photoshop, but that's what I used, so I was familiar with it. And it came up with this. I came up with this logo, which has got sort of rounded edges on this videotape. The idea of this big arrow, it kind of shows something that looks a little bit like tape. It's not just an arrow. And then landing on DVD. Now, I had to be a little bit careful because the actual DVD logo is copyright. So in fact, though that looks quite similar to the DVD logo, it is actually just the idea of a picture of a disc at an angle, and the font there is actually just a built-in Windows font, which happened to look reasonably close to what I was aiming for. But that is not the proper DVD logo, but it's sort of recognisable. Now, that was fine in the days of transferring things to DVD. I almost never do that anymore. I was a bit lucky, perhaps, that I didn't include DVD in my business name. So some businesses, came up with, I don't know, video to DVD dot what have you, and that would have been unfortunate since DVD has pretty much gone by the wayside now. I still do use the DVD logo, of course, on those few occasions that I do still produce DVDs for customers. Quite rare now. So I have an Epson XP-55 inkjet printer, which is capable of printing onto discs. And you may have seen a video I did a little while ago when the power supply blew up and I had to repair it. And it produces discs like this. So this is I'll show you what kind of disc this is later, but it was a silver inkjet printable disc, single layer DVD-R, which is probably the most compatible kind of DVD. This will play in virtually any DVD player. In fact, pretty much any DVD player would play this. That was the colour of the die. So I didn't use too much colour in there. It was a fairly straightforward sort of design, and you can write on here as well. So I found this was quite handy because I could mark up what kind of tapes had been used in the original source and running time and other information on here. Now, some people might, back in the days of DVD, have done custom prints, and I did that occasionally as well. Special requests, customers would say I want a particular print design for my DVDs, and I would do that from time to time using the same equipment, but it's very time consuming. But thankfully, the days of DVD are pretty much over, so I don't do these very often anymore. I unfortunately still have rather too many of these. I've got several hundred of these. These were particularly high quality inkjet printable DVD made by Taiyo Yuden, who got bought by JVC, and it's marked mid TYG03. And that was a very high quality, very dependable DVD. I got virtually no coasters at all with this, and I could load these not only into DVD writers on computers, but DVD drives from JVC and Panasonic, and they'd work every time. 16 speed, obviously you can write faster to some discs, and in theory you could write faster to these, but I only ever did run them at 16 as a maximum. If you need some of these, like I said, I've got a few hundred more than I need, so I could sell some of those, maybe reduce my inventory somewhat, but I'll keep some back. Now, the world moved on from DVDs and we went to USB sticks. So very often I would just buy in USB sticks from my usual supplier, MyMemory.com, and these themselves are actually rebranded Integral, and I may even have some Integral ones here, and they look identical. These were fine, but they don't have the capacity marked on them, so sometimes I ended up having a bit of a guessing game as to what the capacity is on them. There are USB 2, which usually have the black plastic inside there, and some of the sizes were USB 3. Let's see if I have there, which has got blue plastic on the inside. And the performance of these is quite good, actually. I have had a few fail though. I've had one or two die on me, and I've got some to send back in due course. I was using those for a long time for capacities from 16 gigabytes up to 256. If a job required more than 256, I would typically use a portable drive, such as these. Again, these are branded MyMemory. These little 500 gigabyte ones were quite good, but there they are with the MyMemory branding on them. And I also use larger drives for other requirements for customers who needed more capacity. Now, I found that these portable drives were the most successful. I don't like posting the heavier mains-powered desktop type drives. They don't necessarily travel so well, and they cost a lot more to post. So they were fine. Now, the way I would configure these is typically I will provide MPEG-4 files of about 4 gigabytes per hour and larger DV-AVI files of 13 gigabytes per hour, and put them both onto the USB stick. And the reason I have both of those file types is DV-AVI are good for editing. It's a large, low compression file format, and in the case of mini DV and digital 8 and some other formats, it's a pure lossless file format which even encodes the original time and date information from the original tape. And as far as I'm aware, no other file format will do that. So they will be the large files for editing use, but if you want to play files maybe on a TV or tablet or some other device, smaller MPEG files are useful for that. But there's a bit of a limit to how large you can make those files, and most TVs will play them. And I found about 4 gigabytes per hour works, but because I provided the original DV-AVI files, if a customer wants to experiment with different file formats, they can go from those and use some software such as the FreeMake Video Converter or others to convert to a file format that may work on their particular TV and may be able to give better resolution. Now, the other side to this is what disk format do you format the USB stick in. Typically from the factory they come formatted in FAT32, sometimes known as just DOS, but that's no good because it won't take large files. So we have to reformat in one of the 3 larger file format types that are most commonly used, which could be one of the Mac ones, but that's no good because TVs won't read it. It could be exFAT. Well, that's okay, but most TVs won't read it. Some will, some Sony and Panasonic models will read exFAT, but a lot won't. So the alternative is NTFS, which is Windows disk format, and that is readable by PCs and Macs and most TVs. So that's the disk format I would typically use on a USB stick. Bearing in mind that the limitation on Macs is that unless you have some extra software such as NTFS from Tuxera, you can't add to or modify any of the data that's on the USB stick. That's just a Mac failing, really. Macs don't support read-write access to NTFS out of the box, and TVs don't always support exFAT, so something has to give, and that's what the best compromise I find is to make these NTFS so they're readable by pretty much anything. Now that's all well and good, but I was thinking, well, wouldn't it be nice if I could have USB sticks look as good as the DVDs with some branding? So I've been after a company to provide USB stick branding for some time, but there was a difficulty. Most of the companies didn't do the very large file disk sizes, USB sizes like 256 gigabytes, or some that did would only do them in a slower USB 2 form factor. Well, I need USB 3 for the large capacities in particular, like 256 and 128 and maybe 64. Not so much because it make any difference to the customer, because they're just reading the files, but because it could take too long for me to write the data onto them. But I have at last found a supplier who will provide up to 256 gigabytes in USB 3. So the supplier I used for the USB sticks is called the USB Company, and they say we brand sticks and stuff. And that's actually important because having bought some USB sticks from them, I would like them to supply perhaps some hard disks as well, also branded, but it depends on the cost, because I won't be ordering huge quantities of those, and it could be expensive to order a small quantity. But let's have a look at what I chose. They have a large range of USB sticks on their website. Looking at some of the lower priced USB sticks here, they have the twister design, and that's quite handy because they always have a cover to put over the USB stick. But the trouble is they smack a little bit to me of dodgy USBs from some Chinese outfit that are branded one size and are actually another. And I'm sure they're good, but they just don't look right to me. I'm a little bit scared of those. They have the mini twister, and I think there's a hazard with those that you can insert them upside down, and I didn't want that. But I looked at this silk one, and I thought actually that kind of covers it. I like that. It's simple and bright, and I think I could have a nice logo on that. So that's what I chose. And if you look here at, well, this was my original order. Actually, I added more to this. We went for 16, 32, 64, 128 and 256 gigabyte USB sticks. And the three larger sizes are all in USB 3 and the smaller ones USB 2 only. But though the design is quite nice, I like the idea that they put the logo on the front, they didn't, by default, print the size on them. And I thought that was a little bit unhelpful. So I had to pay extra to have the size printed on them, most of them. Now, 16 gigabyte was the size for which cost was actually most critical for me. So on these particular ones, I chose not to have them reverse printed with their capacity. But they do have a little sticker on the sleeve that they come in. So they come in this little plastic sleeve thing, like that. I did kind of hope that that would pop on the back somewhere, and it doesn't, or maybe it would if you take this little loop off. But as it stands, that doesn't stay on. But there's the logo, and I think that works rather well. And you've got a light on there that tells you when you have disk access. So I think they look quite smart. I'm very pleased with those. I think that's a more professional way to provide USB sticks with customer data on than it is to use some other branded USB stick. Now when I went for the larger sizes, let's have a look at one of the larger ones. This was a 128. So as well as my logo on the front, I had them printed on the back with the capacity and if they were USB 3 or not. Let's take one out. There again with the logo, blue as indicates USB 3 anyway, but on the back the capacity. So I think they look quite smart. You notice it sort of flips that way for the capacity. I think that makes sense. Now the print quality I think is very good. Maybe though, if you have an extremely complex logo with lots of writing, you might struggle to be able to read it. I think we can just about get away with it here, but if my text had been any smaller, I think it might have been lost a bit. Now, my impression was, when I started using my own branded USB sticks, as opposed to the MyMemory or Integral ones, that these ran really well, that I could write data to them and use them quickly, and if anything they were better than those. But that's not really good enough, is it? I need to do some measurements, and there was a bit of a surprise there. So I used some software. I used Crystal Disk Mark, which did a set of sequential and random reads and writes. Now I really looked just at the sequential because that's all I'm going to be interested in with the particular use case I have here. I'm not going to be doing a lot of random reads and writes. And I have to confess I don't know what all these different sequential test types are. So I've collected the data for all four and put them on a spreadsheet. Now I'm trying to run down my stocks of the MyMemory or Integral ones. So I only have certain sizes. I've got the 16, 64 and 256s left. So I'll show the speeds of those, but I'll show the speeds of all the sizes of the new ones that I've got from the USB company. So the first thing you notice, of course, the USB 2 type sticks are much slower than USB 3. There's a surprise. But looking at the transfer speeds for the MyMemory ones compared to the ones I've got from the USB company, where higher is of course better, you'll see that the MyMemory ones are significantly faster. Though it has to be said that once we got to the point that they're fast enough, they're fast enough. And certainly these red and blue columns here for the SEQ Q8 and 1s, for the read speeds, that's what the customer will see, that's the read speed. And the difference is, okay, is a percentage, but it's not absolutely massive for the USB 3 type. The write speed is significantly lower, which of course affects me because that's how quickly I can get the data onto the USB sticks. So not so bad perhaps for the 128 size, that's not too bad, but the 64 is a little on the slow side. Okay, but it's tolerable enough. So why is it then that I felt when I was using these sticks that they were so good? It turned out there's something that this chart doesn't show us. The thing is, remember I said that I have to reformat the USB sticks to NTFS before I can write data to them, so they're compatible with as many devices as possible. Put that into a USB 3 port and format that, it takes 7 seconds. Put that one in, it takes 2 seconds. So even though these are a lot slower to write data to, the overall effect I was getting was, oh well, these seem pretty zippy, and that's the reason, because they were formatting so much faster. Don't know what the reason is, but I'm pleased with that. So what are the other items I wanted to brand? Well, these, as I mentioned earlier, were my original business cards, and I had the old DVD logo on there and actually a sort of faint version on the back. I kind of regretted that because it made it a little bit hard to read the text. So I have redesigned that so that I can have these now with the new USB logo on there, but I haven't had them back yet from the supplier. Now the company I use for these is printcarrier.com. They are quite affordable. They do make a nice high quality product. This is a gloss sort of print. I think these look really nice. You can have them in full colour. There's all kinds of options you can have. But I find the company itself a little hard to work with. It's a German company, and some of their documentation has random German words in it. Well, I can handle that. I know a little bit of German. But they aren't all that easy to access, I find. So if you wanted to say, oh, can I just ask you something about my print, is it correct? You can pay extra to have them check that your print is correct. And in fact, in my very first batch of cards, I did pay to have them check, and they checked, and they sent the cards, and they were a disaster. They had white bands on them. They said, oh, we hadn't checked for that. Fortunately, they provided replacements free of charge. So I found them a little bit difficult. I wish they had somebody who could just spend 30 seconds just making sure that what you've got will print correctly. Now, I understand they have to charge extra for some of the services, especially if you're asking complex questions about getting the colour exactly right. For me, it didn't matter. I'm just using a colour that looks nice. But sometimes you've got a corporate colour that's got to be right, or you might be printing in full colour, like images of things, and they have to look right. So, especially if you've got a human face on it or something, you've got to get it right or it'll look terrible. So I can understand why they'd need to charge for that. But the basics of will it fit on the business card, a human being spending 30 seconds just making sure that it looks sensible, probably would be a good investment. So you can pay for a full human service, but it's more expensive. Oh, another thing, I had ordered a batch of these many years ago, and when I said, can I have another batch, I said, I trust you've got the files on record. They said, no, we don't keep the files. And they're not exactly large files. They could keep them for each customer so that you can just say, more of the same, please. Other branding I've done, I've got the t-shirt here. I've got a couple of these in different colours. So this one's quite day glow, and also has big logo on the back. Maybe it's a little bit too big and obvious, but anyhow. These are quite nice. This particular one, I like the material of this one very much. So I will also provide information on where I ordered these from. It's a local company, and I quite like the quality of the print. These have been washed several times, they've not faded at all. Well, I do hope you've enjoyed this little chat about branding. Now, I normally cover a lot of audio and video technology on this channel, and probably this will be my next one. It's a gorgeous Philips V2000 format video recorder, which I'm hoping to get on the bench and get repaired. So do come by and watch me work on that and other equipment in the near future. Bye for now.